My guest on this week's episode of Suds Search is Glenn Pasch, CEO of PCG Digital. Glenn is considered one of the top thought leaders in digital marketing for automotive dealerships. He frequently presents at conferences, including Digital Dealer, NADA, the World Shopper Conference, and NIADA. Glenn and his brother Brian also host two conferences of their own, the Modern Retailing Conference and the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference. Glenn is the host of the impressive podcast, You're in Charge with Glenn Pasch. The podcast is less about marketing as it is about leadership and responsibility. I really like it. He's also the co-author of two books, Selling Cars in the Digital Age and The Power of Connected Marketing. Amazingly, he finds time to lecture at Northwood University as an adjunct professor. I chatted with Glenn at an interesting time for automotive digital marketers. The biggest conferences in the industry are back in full swing. There's a chip shortage. COVID has changed the businesses forever. We'll have a wide-ranging conversation about where the industry is headed and generally what it takes to be an effective leader during a period of immense change. I'll also ask him about hot topics in our industry. Google announced that they will be sunsetting Universal Analytics in the summer of 2023. I'll talk to Glenn about the ramifications of that change and how he is advising clients to prepare for it. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation with Glenn Pasch. We'll chat about vehicle ads, his takeaways from NADA, which was back in person for the first time in almost 3 years, and we'll go down a rabbit hole talking about leadership and people management. All right, Glenn Pasch, welcome to Suds Search. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you today?
I'm doing well. I want to get started with your podcast, actually, and talk a little bit about what you've got going. I really like it.
Thank you.
The title of it is You're in Charge with Glenn Pasch. Now, you're a big name in the automotive world, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this podcast isn't just for people in automotive. I think anyone in a position of leadership could really enjoy this podcast. Anybody who aspires to be a better leader could really enjoy this podcast. Tell us about the show, and I'm really interested in who your target audience is for this.
Oh, great. Yeah, and thanks for having me on. I started the podcast, I think in 2020, June, and I had friends who were podcasters who kept yelling at me going, you need to do this. And I kept putting it off. And finally I said, okay, we'll do it. But the genesis of it was I saw a lot of people, and you're right, it's not designed only for automotive. So I was looking at people who were in automotive and some of my friends or, running their companies. There always seemed that people were put in positions of taking charge, right? And saying, great, you're in charge of this project, you're in charge of this team, you're in charge of whatever it is. And people always would turn around and go, great, but now what do I do? Meaning they didn't know how to, or they didn't have anyone training them how to get better at doing that leadership, running a team. And so I said, I do that. I help people. So why don't we just get people on and talk about it? Not just myself. I would balance it and do some solo episodes, but I really wanted to talk to other people and say, okay, you're in charge of marketing. Or we just spoke with Greg the other day, Greg Gifford, and we got talking about, for his expertise, local SEO. And we were saying, great. So marketers, whether you're doing it or you're dealing with an agency, well, what is it? And what should I do? And how do I take charge of this? And we broke down some tactical things. I've had guests on who a previous New York City prosecutor, and now she helps companies and leaders with communication, how to make your point, how to lead a conversation, how to be clear. So there's a lot of different skill sets that wrap around leadership. And so I just like talking to other people about their journey, and hopefully the audience takes away some tactical things that they can do to make themselves a little better.
Well, I thought what I'd do is I'd ask you a couple of leadership questions, and then we can kind of get into the weeds a little bit more. But, one of the things that it occurred to me right now, as we're filming this in late April, is the job market. It's crazy, and everybody's talking about it, how to get more talented employees, how to retain your talented employees. This is a real leadership challenge as I see it, and the job market in 2022 is just as crazy as it was in 2021. There's no sign of this slowing down. This is impacting marketing agencies, car dealerships, giant corporations, mom and pops. Everybody's going through this. You had an episode with the very talented, I think the gentleman's name was Andrew Street, talking a little bit about this. But I'm curious. This seems like a topic that would touch on a lot of people's lives. It's a leadership question. What leadership advice do you have about finding and retaining quality people in this crazy job market?
Well, I think you first have to realize that people have more options now.
Yes.
And people can work at home and make a living. There are people who just said, I don't want to deal with XYZ, and they're making money delivering food with DoorDash, or
Right.
they're doing Uber. So there's a lot more. You have to realize now that, one, people have more options. Number two is the days of paying people really, really minimum wage or really low wages just doesn't fly anymore, because they can make the equivalent of that, right? So if you're paying somebody $10 an hour, let's say, that's $400 a week. Somebody can go drive DoorDash or Uber and make tips and have more flexibility with their time and make that same amount of money. And so as a leader, you have to understand, one, what am I paying? And it may be a little more now than it was. Number two is, in terms of retention, you have to be more flexible. For us, our agency, we went remote in 2020, and we haven't gone back to the office. We have an office, we downsized, and it's more open to people whenever they want to come in versus you have to be in. So again, you have to have some flexibility now, because not that you have to give everything away. Please don't understand I'm saying, oh my God, the employees run the show. It's not that. You just have to be more aware of options that people have now. And you may not be the only game in town where I can still make that wage or even a little more, but feel that I'm more empowered with my time.
Yeah, it seems like that would be the challenge then. Is like, you need to be flexible. You need to be able to bend a little bit in here, but you still need to hold people accountable. You still need to be the boss, right? You still need to be in charge. So
Well, but accountability and
stuff happens.
flexibility are two different things. Like, I hold my team accountable to their job,
Right.
but if their work, I don't micromanage them in terms of you have to be from 9 to 5 and this. I have some people who I look at myself, and so I always try to lead from my own world, meaning if it's okay for me, it should be okay for my employees, meaning in the morning, I have to take my kids to, drop them off at school, or I'm focused on where I might have to go pick them up for a doctor's appointment. So I'm not there 9 to 5 tied to my desk. So neither
Right.
should they. I hold them accountable to the results. And so I think that's where that flexibility is, of not micromanaging, still holding them accountable to get the job done. But that's where this day of you have to be in the office, you have to be here at 9 o'clock, you have to be, that's a little bit old fashioned thinking of, I have to see everybody to think that they're working. But just because they're in your office doesn't mean they're productive
Right.
all of that time either.
Right. They could be doing laps talking to everybody in the office. Yeah. All right. So the other leadership question I thought would be interesting to bounce off you is about change. So we both work with a lot of automotive dealerships. Between COVID, the chip shortage, changes to electronic vehicles that are coming down the pike. It seems like a period of particularly a lot of volatility.
Right.
In marketing, there's a lot of volatility in our business, right? Ad changes, ad format changes, new SERP features. It's an explosion of spend in digital media at this time. But, change. It's an important
Right.
leadership concept, being a steady hand in there. What advice do you have about being a leader during a period of hyper change, or a lot of change like we are in now?
Well, I think you have to have a balance of where you know where you're going, because just because things are changing doesn't mean you have to embrace them. I have a client of mine who was out at NADA, the National Automotive event, and some of the new technology that's out there, and he said, well, I don't have to be the first one in. I don't have to be the first one in the pool.
Right.
So I think sometimes change, you have to look at it to say, is this change? Why am I doing this? And I try to work with my clients, my business, people who I reach out to me, is if you have your anchor of what I want my customers to feel when they do business with me, or when they finish, in the case of automotive, they buy their car, they service their car, they drive back out onto the highway. How do you want them to feel? And then you can work backwards to say, okay, well, what does my team have to do in order to deliver that feeling. Then we build processes. Then we find the people to do it. Then we find the technology to do it. Then we market it. We monitor it. So anytime something new comes in, you have to look at it through that lens of, does this fit my business model? Because even in automotive, not all of the changes that are going on may fit someone's way of how they want to run their dealership or their business. So through that lens, then you can look at it and say, great, do I want to even investigate this? If I do, great. If I'm going to change something, is this a replacement for something that I currently do? Or is this an add-on? Where does it fit? Who does it affect, right? And so there has to be almost a process to implement change, or else what happens is you end up with this Frankenstein monster and you don't really know. You're just changing because, oh, that dealer who I like does it, or that business does it, or I read it in the newspaper and somebody scared me into doing something. But if you think through change through that lens of, is this right for me? Then how do I implement change? Then I think you're not so pulled, like run to one side of the boat, run to the other side of the boat, feeling out of control.
Yeah, tilting at windmills. I'm going to use that advice. I think that's a topic that comes up for us a lot at SearchLab. So, you mentioned NADA, and I wanted to pick your brain on it. It was back in person this year. It was awesome. The crowd was great. The presentations were excellent. It's always a good chance to get a pulse on what dealers are looking for in terms of their marketing in particular. As you reflect, this is a broad question, but as you reflect, I'm curious, what did you hear from dealers you spoke to about their marketing needs in this moment? What are people looking for?
Well, dealers definitely went there with a purpose. I think they had spent the downtime or away time, so to speak, doing their research. People came with an initiative. They are, I'm going to replace X. I need to go find Y. But interestingly enough, I think a few of the dealers that I was talking to, and even when I walked around the floor, they're real in terms of marketing. There's really not anything new, maybe a little widget here or there. I think dealers now look at digital, what a lot of what you and I do, as traditional now, meaning you have to do it. It's not optional, right? So if you now just say all of this marketing is necessary, what I think the smarter dealers were doing was, one, realizing that I don't care what anybody says, it's not that it's all the same, but the difference between agency to agency, no matter what they claim, is, not the good ones I'm saying, is not so drastic. Okay. It's really what they were looking for was, who can I build partnerships with? Who can I build relationships with? Who's going to work with my other vendor partners, right? Versus silo digital, silo traditional, silo this, silo that. Who's willing to get to the table and work together with all the vendors to solve my problem? So I think they were more realizing there isn't any, and now going back through that lens of what I just talked about and said, who's going to fit my business? Who's going to help me in my business versus the new buzzword? Oh, Amazon's the new buzzword, or whatever the new buzzword is. I don't think they're buying it anymore.
Yeah, I think it's such a good point. Yeah, we advise our people, if you can get out of the SEO conversation, I'm just an SEO, and get into the marketing conversation, that's better. If you can get beyond the marketing conversation, get into the business strategy conversation, now you've really made an impact and entrenched yourself with a client. So I think that's all to the good. One thing I thought of when you mentioned that, resisting change, or maybe being a little bit cautious about change, is a new ad format that Google announced at NADA, vehicle ads. These have been in beta for a period of time now. This is an ad format where you can have a specific vehicle listed in the SERP with some pertinent details, the price, if it's a used car, how many miles, and everything like that. This is kind of the shiny new object in PPC. What are your impressions early on? I have a feeling I know how you're advising.
I think it's too early to tell, but that to your point is, it becomes the new thing where all of a sudden someone sees it and they call up like, are we doing this or what's going on? You know, even when I mentioned Amazon, you know, their new everybody's running to that. The problem is when we talk to Amazon and we've talked to them, they said, great, it's new. Them don't have enough data
Amazon
to
doesn't
know what works or what doesn't work. And I think it's the same way with the VLA ads. You know, they're new. In theory, they sound good, but they're still working it out. Agencies are still working it out, but we don't have enough ground, water under the bridge, so to speak, to really say, do they work, or is it just going to be another, impressions and clicks?
Right.
But again, if nothing's set up in your analytics, it doesn't really matter. You can't see what's going on. So I think you're right. I think everybody has to be aware of it, but then go into a test phase and say, okay, let's test these and be willing, both as agency and marketers, as dealers or businesses, to realize not all marketing works. And that's okay. It's what are we doing post that test didn't work? Let's try this. Let's tweak this. And if you have that relationship with your agency, then you're looking long term. You're not looking for this, well, if it fails today, that means you're horrible, get out. Now, like, I don't want those clients. Like, I don't want partners like that. Right. I want to say, listen, over the year, what did we do? This is, think of it. I think of marketing as chemistry. Little of this, pull this lever, try this, test this. Oh God, that blew up. Oh, that looks good. And you build some momentum that way, right? Because for many of us, we don't remember when PPC was starting. Right? We don't remember when social media advertising started. I mean, some of us do, but a lot of people don't. All the failures we had and all the messes, and then Google changed something and because remember, we're using their toolbox and they're changing it and fixing it and tweaking it. Someone made the analogy, they're building the plane while we're flying it.
Right.
Right. And so when you think of it that way, you go, okay, promising. Talk to me in a year. Talk to me in 6 months.
Yeah. I just reflect on that advice. As changes come through, run it through a process. Have a good process that you can go through. I'm curious if you get this one. We get this as an agency where we feel like we're a strategic partner. It should be a conversation back and forth. And instead it's sort of like their vehicle ads, go get those for me. We want them no matter what. I'm telling you, I'm the guy paying the bills. Go do those things. We may advise caution or maybe a smaller investment and a testing phase like that. But as an agency principal, I wonder how you advise clients when they are ready to just go. They say, "Here's my money. Go, blank check. Go ahead and do this."
Well, I think they, again, it depends where you are in your relationship. Because if you've built a good relationship, they trust you.
Right.
Where you say, I don't want to waste your money, right? So for us, we look at it and I say, I can spend as much money as you want. It may not be spent well, so I don't understand why you want to waste. But if we see it's working, then great, let's double down on that. I will be the first one to come to you and say, you need to spend more money on this. Because look, here's the data. Here's what's working. It's making the phone ring. It's getting people to the website. They're doing this. We want more of that. But again, you're only... If somebody's going to put me in a position to say, no, I want you to spend X, then I'm going to tell them, okay, I'm documenting that you told me to spend X. Right. I'm telling you that the results may not be what you think they're going to be. Right. So I'm just prepping you ahead of time. I'm giving you my advice as the expert to say, I think we should spend half or what. But at the end of the day, they are paying the bills. Right. But most of the time, we don't have clients that do that. They want us to go into it, and are we doing it? But very few of them are coming and just saying, "Here's 10 grand, throw it on that." We don't have that. I'm sure maybe they're out there, but it's more, are we doing this? And we're saying, yes, we are. We're testing it, or we're testing it with a few people because, again, we don't want to offer or recommend things that we know aren't going to work. Just because they're the new buzzword.
Yep, I love it. Well, I wonder. Another thing that's on the horizon that's coming is a change to analytics. So Google Analytics, really, I started in this business in 2007. It's been like one change that I can remember to Google Analytics was not that significant. But there's going to be a major change to Google Analytics in July of 2023. So they're calling this GA4. What is now Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, will be sunsetting at that time, and GA4 will be the only thing left. And I'm
Right.
not sure that most clients, much less agency people, realize how big a deal this is. That Google Analytics is a key to holding vendors accountable. It's a key to performance.
Sure.
And this is going to be a major change, and the time is now to get ready for it and to start getting aware of it. How are you advising clients as vis-a-vis this GA4 change?
Well, we're trying to, it goes back to the analogy of they're building it as we're flying it, because it's not every week it's, oh, we can do this now and we can do this. So what we're doing for our clients, one, we're educating them that this is going to happen. We're telling them, don't worry about it. We're setting it up for you. And right now we're starting to do it side by side. So we'll have two things. So we make sure it's running. The other thing is that Brian, my brother Brian, and I and our team decided that we need to talk about this. To your point, is we have to let people know. So we've decided that twofold. We're known for, one side of our company is the agency. The other one, we're known for, our events, which we're holding one next month in Napa Valley, and we'll be talking about this. And in the fall, we'll be having workshops and things about this. But we're creating a council. So we decided to create sort of a council, a GA4 council, where we will get dealers and vendors who want to get together and say, okay, what should this be? Trying to get to a point where we have some standardization, at least across automotive, because right now, every vendor's tagging things differently. My brother and our team had put a few years ago, just events. So that standardized events. And vendors started using them. Website companies were, third-party tools were. So someone could go in and see, this is an event, chat start, chat finish, this, all the way through. So we said we should be talking about that now and getting some vendor partners who said we want to be on this council over the next year, so that, and then get dealers who want to participate as well, but also then develop training. A day of training, some online courses, a handbook, a manual, things like that, so that Google GA4, how do we do it for automotive? Because it's different, right? If you go get certified, that's one thing, but it's a little different when you're setting it up for automotive. So how do we do that? So again, we're going to be announcing that probably in the next week or so. Definitely at our event in Napa, we'll be talking about it, so that agencies like yourself and a few other agencies have said, oh, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of this initiative, so that all of us look aligned. And more importantly, as my brother said, to your point, is nothing's really changed. So why go in and do it wrong? Why not all get together and try to standardize some things right out of the gate, so that we don't make the same mistake later on? So that's where we are. Talking about it and getting it set up. So we're excited about that. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
No, I appreciate that. That's showing yourself as leaders again. So very good. A couple of conference topics, and first of all, kudos to your location scout for Napa Valley. That's a very good spot to go. But you've got that conference coming up, and then the Modern Retail Conference, which our VP of Search, Greg Gifford, will be there. We'll have a presence there as well. To be in Florida. Yes. Walk me through these conferences. If there's still time to
Sure.
to enroll for the Napa Valley, I want to make sure that we get that deadline squared away.
Yes.
And tell us what's on the docket for this year.
Yeah, so we've been doing conferences for almost 10, 11, maybe even 12 years. I think this is the 12th Digital Marketing Strategies Conference. We early on, we realized that we liked educating, and other people liked to do it, but nobody wanted to take charge. Back then it was Digital Dealer was just starting, and we said, well, we can do one too. We don't want to be as big as they are, but more intimate setting. So the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference is May 22nd through the 24th. It's a Sunday through Tuesday. Yes, tickets are still available for dealers. We have sponsors. We also try not to, for the dealers who are listening, we made a decision not to just sell allied tickets, meaning having vendors come, because again, if sponsors are sponsoring and putting money to help run it, just having someone being able to buy a ticket, we've done it in the past, but then you find people out in the lobby suitcasing.
Yeah.
And that's just not fair to the sponsors. So we don't do that anymore. So the only people who are there are either we've chosen them to come and speak, or they're sponsoring. So there still are dealer tickets, available. Absolutely. And that really, it was designed to be what it says, strategy, not just about marketing because it's expanded, but some of the themes this year, we asked dealers, we're like, what's bothering you? What do we need to talk about? So we're going to be talking about EV,
Okay.
but more, what content do you need on your site? Like, what content should you be developing to answer the questions that your consumers are having about EV? We're going to be talking about how AI, that it's not even, we call it AI, but is it really AI? But more importantly, when do you use it? How do you use it? Is it going to end up replacing salespeople or BDC? Through new things in marketing automation. We're going to have a few case studies from Chip Perry and the Paragon Honda and Acura teams. The Cavalli Auto Group is going to talk about how they really have found a way to measure fixed ops marketing spend and attach it to ROI. We can do some of that. Great top. I just had a meeting with them yesterday about it. And this is a great point because the three vendors who are helping them, they all work together. They have weekly meetings to do this. So the Vista Dash team, Dom 360, and I think it's Update Promise. All of those. So it's a great conversation. And the other thing about our conferences are, we limit it. We're going to probably have about 120 dealers. And so maybe there's 200, it's about 2-to-1 dealers to vendors. But over the course of 3 days, because it's this intimate experience, you're not running through halls to get to your next thing. You're not going from building to building or whatever. You're hanging out for 3 days and you can see. So like your guys will be in the fall conference, Greg will speak, but guess what? Greg's going to be there for 3 days. So people can come back and say, hey, I was thinking about what you said yesterday. Or then they meet the vendors because the vendors are in the workshops as well. Right. And then they're having meals. And so it's this 3-day conversation, so to speak. And then our new conference, we renamed it. It was the Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit. But again, it's expanded. So we're calling it the Modern Retailing Conference. It's in November in Florida. And we're expanding it now. So now we'll be talking about marketing, but we're going to talk about sales process. We're going to talk about BDC. We're going to talk about HR. We're going to talk about hiring and fixed ops. So this way we can expand it so dealers feel comfortable bringing 4 or 5 of their team, and they all have tracks. And we're partnering with Paul Daly and his team to work on a track about creativity, the creative process. So he's going to bring in branding people and video and really hands-on type of workshops as well. So we're expanding that, but I appreciate you asking, but yeah, they're really great. People love coming to them. They find value, both sides. Vendors find value, dealers find value, because also the dealers can find other dealers in their same situation, right? So we have that. And then the other thing we built this year was what we call our CXO Summit, which is for C-level employees in dealership groups, 10 or more stores. Great. And that concept came because some dealers were at, let's say, a 20 group for their brand, and you have 15 stores and the other person has a single point store, and you just don't connect on that same level. But now when you put these groups in there where you have 20 stores, 30 stores, those issues that you have are completely different than just marketing. It's, do we build our own marketing agency versus hiring? A lot of different. So we're trying to create these different arenas where, people can come, collaborate, learn, both from the vendor side and also the dealer side.
Awesome. Well, one last thing I want to promote with you, if we could, Digital Dealers coming out.
Sure.
And as I understand it, you'll be at Digital Dealer presenting on lessons learned during COVID. Real quick, can you give our audience a sneak peek about what you'll be talking about and what they could learn there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think, necessity, or someone said hard times, we come up with some really smart ideas. And during COVID, we had to, depending where you were, right? I'm in New Jersey, everything was shut down. Yep. So if you wanted to sell cars, you had to explain to somebody. So market your process. How did you do this? You had to negotiate over the phone and through email or your DR tool or however you were doing it. And then all of a sudden, now that we're expanded out, same thing with inventory. Inventory's not here, man. So many dealers have pivoted to think that of themselves as more used car dealers that sell some new vehicles, right? And then service techs and retaining. So all of those, we started thinking of ways to do it. My fear is as inventory starts to come back at whatever level it's going to be, are you still going to be as aggressive going to customers and getting inventory? Or are you just going to forget that and go back to the auctions, right? In terms of, to your point is, we had to really work hard to get some really good people in here because it was competitive and we had to really market why somebody should work here. Are we going to forget about that, right? And our process, right? We really made it easy for customers to do business. Like, are we going to complicate things again? So we're going to touch on those and show examples and just remind people you should, if it was working, why change it? Add on. Just because you have more inventory doesn't mean that you shouldn't be talking to every place to try and get used vehicles if that's what you need to do. So that's what we're going to talk about. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I look forward to Digital Dealer. It's a great event. Like I said, it's a lot of fun. Just, it's funny. People say, is yours better? I said, it's just different. It's different. Like, we try to be more intimate. They have a bigger, grander scale, and that's great. And they do a great job of it. So again, it's we have people who go to both. Some people like ours, some people like theirs. It's like there's enough for everybody. Yeah, that's the way we look at it.
I completely agree. Well, awesome. Well, if people want to learn more about your conferences, your services, and your team, what's the best way to get in touch with you? What's your favorite social media? Those sorts of things.
I hang out a lot on LinkedIn and Twitter, and it's just Glenn, 2 N's, Pasch. I post a lot in there about the events, but it's the digital marketing strategies. So it's digitalmarketingstrategies.org. You can go to PCG Digital, or if you want, you can just go to my brother's site, brianpasch.com, and we have all the links to all of the events as well. But we'll make sure, like I said, we're pretty consistent in our marketing. So if you just go to LinkedIn and look at my posts, you'll find links to get to the site. You can, definitely, and if you want to come to the site as well, to the event as well, like I said, just reach out to me if you need any help. But yeah, tickets are still on sale. It's going to be a phenomenal event. We're really excited about it.
All right. And yeah, I would second. I've seen your brothers. He's done some webinars live on LinkedIn before that were really top notch. And I would also vouch for those things. So, well, listen, Glenn, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm going to sign off for now. I'll give you a virtual cheers as we go on.
Cheers.
For everyone listening, we'll be back next week with another episode of Suds Search. Thanks again, Glenn.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.